Hey everyone, Andrea here. Welcome to Karchermakes. This is the place where I just like sharing all the crafty things, and that's almost always knitting. Sometimes it's crochet, spinning, weaving, sewing, quilting. If it's crafty, I love it, and I hope you love it here too. Let's get into it. So it's been a minute since my last regular sit-down episode where I go through what I've made, what I am currently working on, and the things I want to make in the future. But the good news is I have 2 finished objects, sort of 3, depending on what your definition of an FO is. We'll get into that in a minute. But before I start with all of that fun, I just want to say thank you to everyone who watches, subscribes, and comments. I met my goal of 1,000 subscribers. Yay! Thank you all. I really appreciate it. That is a big milestone in the YouTube verse, and I obviously couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for liking and subscribing and commenting. I really enjoyed meeting several of you in real life, and I hope that continues. I'm thinking about doing a Ask Me Anything, FAQs type video to celebrate 1,000 subscribers. So if you have a question, leave it below. If you don't want to leave it below, that's okay. Come over to Instagram. You can send me a DM there, or I'll put up in my stories, I'll put up the little question box and you can drop a question there. Ask me some questions, and maybe on the next episode we can go through some frequently asked questions. Ask me anything. I can share with you some maybe pieces, parts, interesting bits of my knitting journey, my crafting journey, and anything else you might want to know. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. Now let's get into the knitting. So first up, let's talk finished objects. And I am wearing one. This is my finished Flax DK sweater. Now, at the time of filming, this is Memorial Day weekend. We have a 3-day weekend, yay. And normally I would not be wearing a heavy sweater in the end of May. However, here in South Central Pennsylvania, it is in the 50s. I don't know what's going on with this weather, y'all, but as I was casting this off, I kind of thought to myself, yeah, I'll block this and then put it in my bin with all of my hand knits so that they can hibernate for the summer. And I looked at the forecast and I was like, nope, I'm going to wear it because it's going to be chilly. And it is. And it's crazy. So let's talk about this sweater. I love it so much. And I know I say that about every single project, but when I tell you I love this, I love the yarn. I love how the yarn worked up in this pattern, and I love the fit. I only have a couple notes that I would maybe change things on, but for the most part, it is nearly the most perfect sweater that I've ever made. So let's just get into the details of it. First up, the sweater pattern is called the Flax DK, and it's by Tin Can Knits. And if you're not familiar, Tin Can Knits has an app for your phone, and you can go in and access the patterns there. And what they have you do is select your size and your gauge and all of that, and then the pattern only shows those numbers to you. So I didn't use it for this. I use an iPad when I knit, and then I go through and I highlight my numbers and my repeats and all of that fun stuff. But just the fact that they have gone that extra mile to provide that app to folks is amazing. And I know that takes a lot of work, technologically speaking. But I did use the regular I don't know, paper pattern, although it was on my iPad. So I chose to make this in Feederbrook Farm. This is Entropy DK, but these are the mill ends. And I have a couple of videos prior where I talk about the mill ends. And basically what they are is they're shorter, I don't really want to call them mini skeins, but they're shorter lengths of the yarn that was too short to make a regular skein. So what they do over there is they package up these smaller bits and bobs of skeins and into one kind of big hank, and then they sell it that way. And it's really a good value, and especially for a sweater like this, I think that it works really well. And I can't say enough about how the colors work up. So I will insert some footage here of what the sweater looks like on with me standing up so you can fully see it. And like I said, this is one of the best fitting sweaters I've ever made. And as much as I hate to say it, I think it's because I swatched. And that's not something I always do. And it really did make a difference in this project. So the sweater itself, it's knit top down. It has raglan increases, and then it has this fun garter pattern that kind of goes down the shoulder and then down the sleeve. And you can see that here. And I just think that adds a really nice touch to something that could maybe be kind of a boring pattern. Now, the way the colors just happen to work up, obviously I don't have matching sleeves, like they're not even close to matching. That was intended, and it's just due to the nature of the yarn. This is yarn that is dyed in the wool, and I know there's a lot of other brands like this, Spin Cycle being one of them, where they dye it in the wool and then they mill it and spin it at the mill, and it's kind of very serendipitous into how it works up. Some cases there's some barber poling, in other cases it comes out more of a sort of semi-solid. But I think it is beautiful, and I really think that this was the perfect pattern for this type of yarn. I had mentioned when I started this as a WIP that I really wanted to make a cardigan out of it. And when I was going through pre-reading the pattern, I realized that because cardigans are made in pieces, this yarn would be very sort of color blocky, and that's not an effect that I wanted for a cardigan. So I ended up going with this pattern, and the gods smiled upon us, the knitting gods smiled upon us, and it worked out fantastically. So I pretty much knit this to pattern. I did include the optional short rows that kind of hit across the back shoulders, and I would definitely do that again. I do think that it helped kind of raise the back a little bit, and I am wearing a t-shirt under this, so you can kind of see that. But it did help raise the back up a little bit. And then I also chose to do the option where you add the ribbing of the neckline later. You pick up and add that later. And what that does is it adds a lot of structure to the top of the sweater so that the neckline doesn't pull down. I found on a couple other patterns that I've made from other designers where you just immediately cast on and start the ribbing. With the weight of a sweater, it kind of pulls, and then the neckline ends up doing one of these numbers where it stretches out and, you know, maybe doesn't look the best. So I did take the option in the pattern where they explain that and decided to pick up the neckline after the fact. Now, I will say I knit there's a million sizes in this pattern. Talk about size inclusivity. I think it goes from like infant to 5 or 6X. Like it covers the gamut. I think I made the size medium 1 or medium 2. I'll put a note here at the bottom and correct that if that's not right. But I feel like if I make this again, and that very much may happen because it's a great pattern, if I make it again, I may go down a size for the neckline because like I mentioned, I'm wearing a t-shirt under it and it's still a little wide for me, for my taste. But all in all, I could just go down a size on the neck cast on and then increase to the medium, large, whichever size that I ended up making. Increase out to that for the bust and then continue on that way. And then that gives me kind of a smaller, sort of tighter neckline to work with. All that to say, I love this sweater so much. The yarn is, the sheep are raised, the yarn is made less than 5 miles from my house. So this is really, truly a testament to local production and supporting small local businesses. Okay, so that's my sweater that I'm wearing, Flax DK. And I should also mention, they have also a light version that's in fingering weight, which looks basically the same, except the gauge is knit for fingering weight yarn, which I may end up doing. Okay, next up in finished objects, I have a finished pair of socks. These are so cute. So I normally don't knit shorty socks. Regular kind of 6-inch cuff, 6-inch leg socks are my go-to. But I have found that in the summertime when I'm wearing shorts and I'm not wearing flip-flops, like if I'm wearing sneakers, I want a short sock to wear with that. And I have a bunch of commercially purchased socks, but you know, as a sock knitter, I'm like, why don't I just make some short socks? So here we go. These are made from Teeny Button Studios colorway dust jacket, and this is from her 2022 book themed advent, and this was a weekly advent, and it came with 4 or 5 skeins, half skeins of sock yarn, and I opened them every Sunday of Advent that year. And this is the first one that I'm using out of that, so had to go stash diving for this yarn. But I just did a basic short sock, followed my normal vanilla pattern, US 1 needle, 64 stitches. I did, I think, 10 or 12 rows of 2x2 rib. And then the heel is a slip stitch heel and gusset. And then just a regular sort of, I think it's called a wedge toe, where you decrease on both sides. And I think they turned out lovely. And because these are a darker color, they'll go well. I have black sneakers, so they'll go well with that. So new socks, just in time for what will hopefully soon be warm weather. So now we're going to talk about my sort of finished object. It really depends on your definition of finished. I'm considering it a finished object, but really it's one of many. So if you're new here, one of my goals is to make a blanket out of all hand-dyed yarn from dyers that I love. So not terribly different than the End Times cardigan that I made and talked about in several videos, including the last one with Maryland Sheep and Wool. But I decided to go with a log cabin square blanket, and each square is one dyer's yarn, and I decided to crank this one out while I was in between projects here. And the yarns in this one is from Dye Mad Yarns. And the pattern I'm using, there are so many knitted log cabin blankets out there. The one that I just happen to be using is by Very Pink Knits, Stacy Perry, I believe her name is. And super easy, super fast. It takes tiniest amounts of yarn. I think the biggest square rectangle uses maybe 4 grams of yarn, but for the most part they're like 2, 3, 4 grams of yarn for each little kind of segment. And you just start with a square in the middle, you pick up, you do this rectangle, you pick up, you do this rectangle. Do them in order so that they kind of come together. And I could obviously keep going as much as I want. A log cabin is kind of, you know, your preference on how many sections you want to add to it. I chose to do 7 because I feel like that works well with a lot of the indie dyers who package mini skein sets. So I like 7. And then I have a whole stack of these, and then they're gonna one day become a blanket. They're gonna get seamed together and put into a blanket. So there's another square for that. Let's talk WIPs. So I really only have one active work in progress. And I say active because I have a million works in progress that are hibernating. I'm not counting those. I just started this one last night, so it's not really far along, but I really feel like you can already see how pretty this is going to be. So this is going to be the Haiku top by Knitting for Breakfast. And the yarn that I'm using is Kim Dye's yarn. Her smoothie fingering base, which is a 65% silk, 35% linen. And when I tell you this yarn, I've never worked with a silk linen base before. This is amazing. I love it. This may be my new favorite. I know I say that a lot too. This might be my new favorite yarn, at least for summer type knits. It's very soft, but also it doesn't have a lot of stretch to it thanks to that linen. And this would be really good yarn for weaving as well. But back to the knitting. This is the, I've already said this is the Haiku top, Knitting for Breakfast, and it's knit top down. So this is what you're looking at here is going to be the neckline of the sweater. And it has this really pretty lace pattern and these bobbles. Now, I don't love making bobbles. They're kind of tedious, but in this pattern, they're sparse. They're not all over the place. So I went ahead and went with them. I noticed in the pattern or the project notes on Ravelry, some people omitted them, but there weren't too many, so I decided to just go ahead and leave them in. But I love how this is working up. I don't love trying to knit lace and have conversations with people. That's not great. I can't tell you how many times I had to think back rows. This, I could have probably been past the chart at this point had I not had to keep going back. But in any case, I really like how this is turning out. I was a little nervous about using this yarn for a lace pattern because sometimes with variegated yarns, the lace can get lost in the sauce, so to speak, with all of the colors. Like lace in this yarn, maybe I wouldn't make that decision. But because this is so sort of pale and pastel, I feel like it works okay. I feel like it's giving just enough color interest and you can still see the pattern enough that it doesn't kind of detract from the lace. So there is that. I have been, since last night when I cast this on, this is all I have worked on. So it's been really enjoyable. The pattern so far has been easy to follow, although on the bobble directions, I did have to look up a video because the way they explained it in the pattern in writing really didn't make sense to me. So I had to go back and look at a video, and what I found was the way they described it in the pattern was slightly incorrect. They called it a slip knit pass over when really they meant pass 4 stitches over the slipped knit. It's fine. It's okay. It's not a big deal. I figured it out. But just be mindful of that if you choose to make this pattern. So I know I typically give myself deadlines for things. This doesn't have a deadline. I am very much a process knitter, and I am really enjoying this. So I don't want to take away from the joy that is making this by giving myself a deadline and being stressed out, like, is it done yet? It's not done yet. I gotta work on it. I gotta get it done. That just kind of like takes the joy out of knitting for me. So I'm just gonna knit on this and really take my time and enjoy it. And I really already can't wait to wear this. That's it for the knitting portion of this program. But I do have some acquisitions that I would love to share with you guys. So we will start with going back in the time machine for a minute. So my last couple of videos were all about Maryland Sheep and Wool, yarn-centric, weekend, that whole thing. And I completely neglected to talk about local yarn store day, which was April 26th, 27th, whatever that Saturday was before Maryland Sheep and Wool. So I paid a visit to one of my local yarn stores. I am so lucky where I live. There's several yarn stores within an hour's drive of me. And I know not everybody has that. And please know that I feel blessed and privileged by it. But I ended up going to You and Me in New York. I paid them a little visit. And one thing that I like about You and Me is that they really support the indie dyer community. They have so many indie dye yarns in there, as well as quite a bit of commercially dyed yarn. And what I really enjoy is that there's a yarn for every budget there. There's, 100-gram skeins that are like $6, $7, $8, and then there's 100-gram skeins that are $30. And, whatever your budget is, they really do have something that can fit into it. But all that to say, she also has a lot of yarns that are like monthly specials, kind of like club yarn that a lot of indie dyers do, like clubs. And this yarn that I got happened to be one of those. So this is from Shersey Cat Yarns. And this is her Just Sock base, which is 75/25 merino nylon. And the colorway is called Anew. And when I saw this, so the way that the store owner has the store set up there, there's a table and it has like little baskets, and that's where the special monthly yarn goes. I saw this and like beelined for it. And I was like, okay, I found the one. This is the one. So these will be socks at some point. Who knows when? Time is a invented construct, right? But these are going to be socks, and I just love how happy and bright these colors are. Super excited for that. And next up, speaking of Maryland Sheep and Wool, there was quite a few vendors that I wanted to see but weren't able to because there were so many people there, and you guys can go back and watch that video if you haven't seen it yet. The place was packed. So one of the vendors that I wanted to see but couldn't get into because every time I went past her booth, it was just packed full of people. Wee Ones. And they also have an Etsy shop, and they make these little stitch markers. I think you can get them as earrings, charms, whatever you want to use them for. But they make these out of polymer clay, and they have a lot of animals, dogs, cats, all different things. And the one that I got, so the sheep breed of the year for Maryland Sheep and Wool was the Black Nose Valet, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. And she had the little marker, and I hope this is focusing. Okay, so you can see it. So it's the little sheep, and they have a little black-eyed Susan on their head there, because the black-eyed Susan is the Maryland state flower. Did you even know that? Now you know. How cute is this though? So like I mentioned, I couldn't get into her booth at all during Maryland Sheep and Wool, but they posted on social media, oh, hey, we're gonna put those in our Etsy shop. So I had to get it. And what also came with that is this tiny little letter. It's postmarked, has my name on it, has a little wax seal. Now, when I hold this to the light, it looks like there's something in there. I don't want to open it though, because it's so cute and I don't want to ruin it. So I'm just gonna keep it. Is that weird? While we're on the Maryland Sheep and Wool kick, I'm gonna skip the fiber, but then I do have one more yarn acquisition that I'll show you in a minute. But let's talk fiber. So in my last episode, I mentioned getting some Falkland fiber from Into the Whirled. It's what we used in our class with Jillian Moreno, and I really liked the fiber and I really liked the colors that they offered on it. And as I was going through my haul, I showed this one and realized that I picked up the wrong one. So all the ones that I got were Falkland, with the exception of this one, which is Cheviot. And when I talked about this, I was like, oh, it's Cheviot, not a big deal. You know, I could still use it with the Falkland, and, you know, no harm, no foul. You can mix fiber and breeds of fiber. However, the more that I thought about it after the fact, this is also superwash, and the other fibers that I got were not superwash. So I decided to pull this out. I don't want to mix this with the non-superwash Falkland in a project. So I went ahead and pulled this out, but that left me one short for my sweater spin project. So went on their website. They have all of their post Maryland Sheep and Wool inventory on there. And I didn't just get one. If I'm paying shipping, right? Can't just get one. I ended up getting 2 new colors. So they didn't have that color in the Falkland anymore. So I got this one, and it's called Gilmore's Glorious Goods. And when you put it next to this one, which is called Fruition, the colors are quite similar. I think the main difference is that this one has some blues in it, where this one has more darker blues and green. But it's equally gorgeous. It's gonna work for what I want it to work for, so I think that's gonna be just fine. And it's Falkland. And now I know to check twice before I check out. They also had this one, which is called Vampires of Venice, which I thought was really fun. I went to Venice 10 years ago, probably. But it's very moody versions of those same colors. Dark greens, dark blues, dark purples, dark pinks. And I think that's gonna be pretty too. So all that fiber is going to be a sweater spin, and I know that Tour de Fleece starts in, I want to say July, end of June, beginning of July. I'll put the dates here, and I may if I don't break into it before then, I may work on that sweater spin for Tour de Fleece. So if you're interested in spinning, if you're interested in knitting with hand spun yarn, stay tuned for that. I will absolutely be sharing that here. Last up for acquisitions. So what is this? This is the, so I got February, March. This is the April subscription of the Warm Hug Club by Fiber Nymph Dye Works. I got this at the, I think it came the end of April, beginning of May-ish. And I haven't really opened it yet. I kind of ripped it out of the bag and then set it aside because I wanted to show you guys first before I did anything with it. So let's tear into this and see what this month's Warm Hug Club looks like. It's so good, Lisa. It is so good. Look at this. Oh my gosh, I love these colors so much. The pinks, the purples, the neon greens, the teal, turquoise, and then it comes with 2 minis. So I chose to get the Strong DK, which is 75-25 superwash merino nylon, and this color is called Stretch Yourself, and it's a 6-stripe self-striping, and then it has the 249 yard 20-gram minis, and they're called Night Sky and Dream Sea. How pretty is this? I can't wait. Okay, remember when I said I only had 1 active WIP? I'm about to have 2. These are absolutely going to become socks. I talked about possibly making some mittens with these. These are destined to be socks. So what I like about this club, besides Lisa's beautiful color interpretations, is that she also goes through and publishes this little Warm Hug Club newsletter that comes with the skein of yarn, and it's all based on a theme. And I haven't looked at this yet. I'm just now looking at it. This month's colorway, Stretch Yourself, was inspired by the different ways we can stretch ourselves at this time of year. Lovely. Yes. Yes. Now that the weather's getting nice, get outside, move our bodies. I know I could use that for sure. So that's all for the crafting content this week, this time. I am working on a project on my loom. However, there's nothing to see yet. I've dressed the loom, and what it's going to be is a wrap style. It's basically two rectangles that get woven, and then you seam them up the back. So it's kind of like a ruana, I guess. But I've gotten the loom all dressed, little tiny bit of weaving done, and it's just plain weave, nothing fancy, over under plain weave. The yarn is a alpaca blend, which is so soft. It's like weaving with clouds. It's so nice. So I have that going on my weaving loom. And then in terms of sewing, I am still working my way through the 100 squares, the Alice Caroline. I'm trying to think of the name of it. Alice in Wonderland. It's not Alice in Wonderland themed, but her name is Alice, and it's like a Wonderland quilt. So it's 100 different squares. And I have finished a log cabin square. Speaking of log cabin squares, I finished a log cabin square for that. Maybe I'll show that next time. Maybe I'll have time with this 3-day weekend to do another square or two for that quilt, and I can talk about it next time. So let's talk about life stuff now. And normally my life is very boring, and I really don't have anything to share for that, but we did have a very busy week last week. My boyfriend's daughter, Grace, graduated college. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. We are so proud of her. She graduated high school during COVID, and then started college while COVID was continuing. And the fact that she was able to persevere and just work through that, like, I could not be more proud. And, she picked a very difficult major. I wouldn't have picked it. I didn't pick it. My major was art. Her major is microbiology, which is very difficult. It's a very tough field. And, we just could not be prouder. And we went to our graduation last week. It was not without, weather issues. They were calling for rain. It was supposed to be outside in a football stadium, but they were calling for rain, so they moved it inside to the field house where the basketball team plays. So there was a lot of people crammed in. A lot of people couldn't even come because they reduced the number of tickets that each student could get. But ultimately, we were so grateful we were able to see her walk across the stage. And again, just very proud of her for doing that. And then in other news, I got my garden done. So I posted this on Instagram. So if you follow me there, I'm also Karchermakes on Instagram if you'd like to. I posted this on there, but while I was at Maryland Sheep and Wool, my boyfriend, bless his heart, was building the garden. We previously had a very large garden with, I think it was like a 3-foot fence around it. It could not keep the deer out. The deer would just get in there and it was buffet time. It was like they went to the Golden Corral and they were living their best life with the buffet and just decimated everything. So this year we decided to go with a smaller garden that is fully enclosed. It has this like roof thing. It's like a net, but it has a roof on it. And it's also raised beds. So for me, I have bad knees, so for me, getting down on the ground and planting stuff was a little much. It was a little much, but with the raised beds, I can just stand there and get to everything, get to the plants, plant them, weed, and I haven't had any issues with weeds yet, which is amazing. But that's all ready to go. I have 3 different kinds of tomatoes. I have bell peppers that were from starts from my boyfriend's mom. She gave us. I have a couple of different hot peppers. There's a Thai hot pepper. And then I think the other one may just be a poblano, which isn't that spicy. I'm trying to remember now. And then I also have bush lake green beans, which are my all-time favorite thing to grow. If you want to grow something easy, if you're just starting out in gardening and you want to grow something super easy, bush lake green beans are the way to go. Super fast. You can actually get 2 plantings a season. So if you plant them early enough in the spring, let them grow, let them create their little beans, harvest the beans, and then pull the plants out and replant seeds. Because they're a very fast germination, you'll be able to get a second kind of growing season on the beans. So I personally love eating green beans. We use them in a bunch of recipes. So hopefully that helps. I also planted in the yard some salvia, and I got all red ones for like around our patio area. And then I put a mix of red, white, orange, and purple in the flower beds. The hummingbirds love the salvia, and I'm gonna try to get some footage of them this year, hopefully, and I can share that here. But they really just love the salvia. It makes these kind of cone-shaped flowers, and especially the red ones, obviously hummingbirds, they're really drawn to the red ones, and they just get in there with their beak and enjoy the nectar and then move on. And the bees and stuff like them too. So at least where we are, there's not a lot of pollinators. Like, I don't know what's happening. Well, I do know what's happening. The pollinators are struggling, y'all. The bees are struggling, and I'm just trying to plant things and make an environment that kind of attracts those and hopefully helps sustain the bee population where I am. Now, in addition to my flowers, I normally have black-eyed Susans, like I mentioned, the Maryland state flower. I grew up in Maryland. Maryland state flower, black-eyed Susans. I normally have black-eyed Susans, echinacea, different types of coneflowers. The rabbits have mowed it all down. These rabbits. I'm gonna have rabbit stew on the menu with the green beans if they don't stop eating my damn flowers. But I still need to plant the front flower beds. For some reason, the rabbits don't bother those. It's only the back flower beds that they bother. But I still need to plant the front flower beds, and I'll probably be getting marigolds because the deer and the rabbits don't like marigolds so much. Okay, I think that's enough rambling about gardening. This is not a gardening channel, but if you'd like to see more, I can always share more. I'm more than happy to. So this is all I got for you for this time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you so much. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and until next time, happy making.